Thank you
Okay.
everyone for joining this webinar of Life Science Nation, where we're going to be talking about how to get your story straight to really get in front of the investors and to really maximize the effect of your fundraising campaign. My name is Karen Dio. I'm the VP of Product at Life Science Nation, and this webinar will be done primarily by Dennis Ford, our CEO. So Dennis, take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Karen, and hi, everybody, and thank you for coming. Yeah, we're going to spend some time today talking about, getting your story straight. And first, we'll just tell you just a little bit about us and what we do. Karen, could you move the slide forward, please? I don't know how many are familiar with our company, Life Science Nation, but we've been around for 12 years. And I originally started the company after helping raise money for venture capital, private equity, hedge funds, and real estate funds. I did that for about 5 years, traveling around the world, and we built a database that enabled VCs and PE and hedge funds to be able to get a list of people to go after to invest in their fund. And so I kind of took that concept and I said, gee, I could probably build an investor database. And there's 10 categories of investors in the life science space. It's, obviously families and friends, but there's also angels and venture capital and family offices, foundations, patient groups, venture philanthropy, private equity, hedge funds, large pharma, corporate, medical. So the first thing we did was we categorized the 10 categories of investors that are interested in investing in companies from Series C to Series A through E, and basically we have a group in India that does a lot of the due diligence on the internet, and we locate different kind of investors and licensing partners, and then we have a group of 5 full-time investor research staff, which Karen actually used to do for a few years, where we get the investor on the phone, we interview them, we find out what their interests are, and then we put them in the database. And so they give us this information about what they're trying to do and what their mandate is and what they're seeking, because they have a problem is that they need to go find as many assets, technology assets that are a fit for their mandates and investment thesis. And so we've become, for about 4,000 investors, one of their strategies where they go after technology assets. So we have that database. We sell it to fundraising CEOs and scientists, entrepreneurs, and then we've taken that database. And if you're a CEO and you're trying to raise money, you've got to have a couple of things here. Is that it takes 9 to 18 months, and you typically need 600 to 800 targets that are a fit for your stage of development in your product to go after. And then when you get that list of people, you've got to put it into a CRM. So we integrated our database into Salesforce.com. And so that's, one of the products that we have. And then we have these conference series, which is redefining early stage investments. And we hold them 5 times a year. So we're really gearing up right now for this London Resi that's taking event December 4th. And we've been teaming up with a group there called One Nucleus. And right now we have about 100 investors signed up, and we're getting close to having 100 companies signed up. So it's our first time doing kind of like a smaller event. We're calling it kind of a Resi Light, but we're going to have 200 people December 4th in London. And, it's going to be a really good conference. And then from there, we'll start 2025, and we have our Resi JPM conference, which is really the biggest conference we do. And we're going to be at the Marriott Marquis this year in Union Square, and we'll have about 600 investors and about 600 startups. And then from there, we'll go to Barcelona, and then from Barcelona we'll go back to Boston. We'll go back to Boston where Bio is going to be happening, and we're from Boston, obviously, if you haven't heard the accent yet. And then in September, Boston Biotech Week. So we're actually going to do one Resi conference in June and one in September. And then we wrote a book on fundraising. I've got it here. If you guys want a copy, just send an email to us via the chat here, and Karen will copy it down, and we'll send you an e-copy of the book. And so if we go to the next slide, Karen. So the whole point of what we've been doing lately is, we do entrepreneurship education, and we found that after doing this for 12 years, we used to be very polite about what's right and what's wrong about how people are trained in raising money. And thanks, David. We'll get you a copy of the book. We'll be right on that. And anybody feel free to interrupt me and ask me a question. The more interaction we have, the better. But anyways, so we used to be really polite about saying, what's wrong with the industry, because the survival rate of life science startup companies are 95% fail the first 5 years, and then 99% the second years, and by year 10. And so we've seen this figure around for a long time, and we're also believers that it's true. And one of the reasons we think it's true, in our opinion, is that all of the incubators, accelerators, regional biocluster, tech hubs, they all hire these mentors, coaches, entrepreneurs, and residents. And everybody spends all this time teaching the startup company, how do you do a 30-minute PowerPoint? And a 30-minute PowerPoint is super important, but that's not going to be what you need to know to raise money. It's not a 30-minute pitch. It's a 9 to 18-month campaign that's got all sorts of elements in it, from getting a list of targets, from putting them in a CRM, from preparing and launching your conference, from getting you out of your region. And we just got really frustrated with the facts that a lot of the times we get scientists teaching scientists how they think investors are interested in investing, and more times than not they get it wrong because they're completely scientific oriented in their presentations. And if you really think about it for a little bit, if you're an investor, yes, you really care about the science. And yes, you really care about, do you have validated data from your animal models, or do you have, uh, data that can be third party validated to prove that you're on the right track? And you're never going to get away from the science. It's like, the most important thing. But the thing that trumps everything is really the team and the founder, and how the founder kind of got the idea and what was the magic around that. And then how did the team get together? And then how did the technology surface and what was the magic there? And what's the pedigree and lineage of the technology? And how did you get this whole thing together? And so we have a reluctance when we run into people. We were just with a group from Uruguay this week, and I was saying, everybody's got a personal story, and you've got to kind of really practice, like, what's your story all about? And he said, yeah, I hear what you say, but I think I fall into a category that I don't really have a personal story. I don't think you'd be able to do that. And so I said, yes, you do. We just have to find it. Tell me about, how you got interested. So, he said that he's, spent 20 years in the industry, and he really understood product management and project management and clinical trials and all this good stuff. But he was always a middle manager. And he said, I didn't really, do anything particularly wonderful. I just spent a lot of time and did a lot of experience in the industry, but, nothing that stands out. And I said, okay, so then what happened? And he said, well, then I met my founder and we kind of bonded. And I'm like, well, what was that? Who's your founder? And he talked about this woman that he met that's a PhD that had spent 15 years in antibody research. And he basically said that, the fidelity and the tweaking of antibodies and using antibodies to be able to do precision targeting, it's really kind of this thing, they have these platforms and you're trying to deal with the knobs, the horizontal, the vertical, and trying to get everything so that you can really do this targeting with the antibodies. And so we just kept on talking. And then I said, well, what you just told me is really kind of exciting because you said you had just spent all your time getting all this experience doing all what you thought wasn't great, but really turns out to be the core stuff that you need to do: product management, clinical trials, experience across different silos. And then you met someone who had done some really amazing research and had figured out how to tune a particular antibody platform so that you could do your present product. And so that's the kind of thing that nobody's teaching anybody, that they need to be able to really think about their story and how everything unfolded. And what you get is somebody going, let's talk about, here's the problem and here's the solution and here's the addressable market. And it drives everybody crazy because problem, solution, addressable market, it's like cookie cutter, standard. There's no way for you to stand out and really tell your own specific story. So we're at kind of we were trying not to cause a war, and we wanted to have a truce. But after like 12 years of seeing, these cohorts come from all over the world, and these people come to our Resi conferences, uh, and they're just doing these really boring, mundane, industry standard, cookie cutter presentations, and they're just not differentiating yourself. And it's just kind of at the JPM conference we're going to have in January. It's going to be 600 investors and 600 startup companies, and they're going to wind up getting 600 requests for emails. And so they're not going to go through 600 PowerPoints and 600 executive summaries. So you have to figure out a way, how are you going to really curtail your messaging, and how are you going to really net out your story so that someone could look at the first title page of your PowerPoint and go, oh, I need to meet those guys. So anyways, Karen, do you remember what the tagline in what the elevator pitch was for that antibody scientist?
Yeah, it was about precision nanobodies applied topically for autoimmune disorders.
Yeah, that was cool. And do you remember what we kind of zeroed in on for the elevator pitch?
Yeah, that, they had, she'd spent, the founder had spent 15 years tweaking the technology to be able to manipulate the antigen binding pocket for a lot higher affinity for these autoimmune that could affect these autoimmune disorders, and that they found a way to like localize the delivery in order to really apply it topically, to have a uh, non-systemic treatment for people that have moderate cases of things like psoriasis, that, so they don't need to undergo the harsher systemic treatments that are out there that have much harsher side effects as well. And so they're
So
yeah.
so one of the things that we do is we kind of, we we wound up being late for the meeting. He wound up being late for the meeting because the transportation system in Boston is terrible. And so we are going to do 45 minutes, but we wound up only having 15 minutes. And so he said, Dennis, you're not going to be able to get a story out of me. And now you only got 15 minutes. And so after 15 minutes, we kind of got to this point where we were at, where we got his tagline and his elevator pitch. And I said, did we do it? And he said, yeah. And so everybody has to do that. So let's go on to the next slide and we'll try and figure out more about how we can explain how everybody can do it. The introduction to entrepreneurial education, we have these boot camps that we have, and we have 14 classes that you can buy that are 30 minutes a piece. And we've already talked about, like, if you think you're going, the theme out there is we'll get your PowerPoint presentation down, then you'll go to a partnering event, then you'll go meet a VC, and then the VC will fund you, and then you'll wind up doing a deal with a pharma, and off you go. And it's just couldn't be further from the truth. And which creates this really difficult situation with failure, because if you're a startup company and you're thinking all you need to do is get a PowerPoint and then go to a partnering event and see a VC and then go get some money from them and then get your exit, it just doesn't work that way. And we've been working in the field for 12 years, and we've seen really great scientists and really great technologies in their 6th and 7th year, after pivoting a few times and finally getting it right, and almost going out of business and then getting saved at the last minute, and all sorts of great stories all over the place. But we've helped about 400 companies raise over $5 billion. And the reason they can do it is, number one, we can kind of get the mindset right, that it's not just getting a PowerPoint, it's basically getting a story straight. And then it's all about getting out of your region, because it's you're playing a numbers game. And then it's like, how do you play that numbers game adroitly so that you can get as many meetings as possible, because that's really what it takes to raise money, find collaboration partners, and get licensing deals done. So let's go to the next slide. So when we say the scientist comes out, decides they want to be a CEO, which I think is great. And I'm not one of those people that say, oh, you're a PhD, you can't be a CEO. I think you can be a CEO as long as you want to be, especially when you're starting up a company. And so part of the thing that a lot of PhD scientist entrepreneurs and first-time CEOs don't really understand is that you've got to figure out how you're going to learn some of the basic elements of, like, sales, business development, marketing. And it's just really not that hard. And obviously, if you're listening to me, you go, this guy's a sales BD guy, which I am. But the things that I've learned that I want to teach you is that the foundation of sales and the foundations of marketing and the foundations of BD, business development, it's all about a list. If you look at every one of those 3 silos, it's all about, at the beginning, is how do you get a list of people to go after? And how do you make the list big enough so that by the time you're done with it, you will have accomplished your task of selling them what you're trying to sell them, be it a product or investing in your company or finding a collaboration deal. And so one of the most important things for people, and if I, talk to you folks today, and I said, how many lists do you have? How many are fundraising? And then how many that are fundraising? How big is your list? And we do it all the time, and some people have 6 and some people have 20 and maybe some people have 40, but nobody's got 600 or 800. And that's really what you need. So that's kind of why we created the database, and kind of why we have the Resi conferences, because you can go there and you can meet people that are a fit for your stage of development, that want to either figure out how to do a collaboration, figure out how to do a licensing deal, or figure out how to give you some capital. And so that's what we're coming into. And so a lot of times when I talk with startup CEOs, they go, nobody's investing. And, I just went through the 10 categories of investors, and some of them, angels, angel syndicates, family offices, um, philanthropic, patient groups. I mean, they don't need permission from anybody to give money out. They've got their own money that they have, and the VCs and the PE guys, they have to go a different route, and they have to go to endowments, foundations to go get the money for their funds. But a lot of people don't have to. So when I hear people tell me I meet VCs and they're not investing, I always go, tell me who the VC is. And because I've been in the industry so long, I know most of them. And they'll go, oh, I went to Polaris, or I went to, Atlas, or I went to, MPM, or I went to, and I'm like, well, those people are not the right people for you. You told me you're preclinical and you're trying to get some animal models so you can get to IND, and those, a lot of the people you're talking to are trying to look for phase 2 companies, and so you're nowhere near them. So if you're going to the wrong VC and then you keep on repeating the process, and then you say, geez, VCs aren't investing, it's really not right. And so when I start digging, what I find is that venture capital companies in 3 flavors. They have a theme of early stage. And so early stage is I will go find, great technology assets, and I will invest a little bit of money in a lot. It could be 10, it could be 20, it could be 30, but they're going to, spread their money out in really early stage companies. And then you go to the other ones that I call mid-stage VCs, and they're going, we want to get into a company when it's de-risked. So the product's up and running, it's limping, it's showing good data. And so, like, it's phase 2B, or it's about to be phase 2B, and then it's de-risked. And so that's when we want to put our money in. And then there's the other last form, which is the, growth capital. And those are the guys who said, hey, we're at phase 3 clinical trials, and we got to go figure out how we're going to sell this thing, how we're going to grow our channel. Are we going to have a direct channel and go hire a bunch of people? What's our strategy there? And so they're talking about throwing in lots of money to either create a channel or integrate into existing channels with distributors and other things like that. And so if you're a fundraising CEO and you're in the early stage of your journey and you're talking to mid-stage and late-stage VCs, it's just not a fit. And so those are some of the things that we want you to be aware of, that we can get you a list of 600 to 800, and it's going to be a list of people that are a fit for your stage of development of your product. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, one thing I just want to add in terms of these VCs, one easy way for you to be able to tell what stage they're at is look at their fund size. That's the easiest way to tell what stage they're investing in. And that's publicly available information because they have to file paperwork with the SEC. So just keep an eye out. If they have a $50 million fund, they invest early stages. If they have a $500 billion fund, they invest late. So that's just an easy way for you to be able to keep an eye out on if the VC is a fit for you or not.
Right. Next slide, please. So, there's 10 things you really, startups are not being taught. And the thing that is really kind of interesting to me is you need 600 to 800 targets if you're going to go for 9 to 18 months. And the other point is that 800 becomes 400, becomes 200, becomes 100, becomes 50, becomes 25, and it really goes fast. And so if you're starting with, 10, and you think you're going to, have enough firepower to with 10 targets, it just doesn't work that way. So you've got to start out the right way, and you can go do all the research yourself, but we can go into our database, and Karen can do a database demo for anybody that wants to see one, and we'll just show you that whether you're a drug, a device, a diagnostics, or digital health, we can find the targets that you need to have. And then, if you're going to go after them, you need a strong, simple, compelling story to tell them. And so with this antibody, precision antibodies that are going to allow nano drugs to get through the skin to treat certain skin diseases. If you can just pick out the key words and kind of nail it so that someone can see it and go, oh, I need to talk to these folks. Um, and then the third thing is, you need a CRM to manage your list. That's the thing that most people don't get. And so they say, oh, I'll just put it in an Excel spreadsheet. And it just doesn't scale. You put 800 leads into a Excel spreadsheet, and then you're trying to, did I send them my executive summary? Did I sign the NDA? When's the next meeting? How many people are in their company? How many do we talk to? All of the elements that you need to, manage a relationship with a profile that you're trying to create a dialogue with, you really need to be able to take notes and get reports and do all the things. And so those are, three of the bottom line. Let's go to the next one, Karen. And this is the one that, I found it's the hardest to explain to people, but it's the thing that really makes the difference. And so, if you're raising money, you need to have a lot of people to go after. You need a simple story. You got to put it in the CRM. And then what happens is the scientist entrepreneur or the founders, they go, well, I'll just, send this person an email or I'll just call them. And canvassing and doing a canvassing campaign to be part of a global fundraise it's like so important to do it right and so easy to do it wrong. And if you're not the right person for the job, like having a founder or a CEO, go, well, every day at 4 o'clock, I'll just spend an hour reaching out to people. It's like, it's just so wrong on so many levels. Uh, but if you can find somebody in your organization, who's an admin or a part-time intern or an entry-level BD person, someone who's social media savvy, a people person that loves to organize and set up things, those are the perfect people that you can use to do that really super intense resource job. It just takes so much time. And it's not sending out a few emails and not making a couple of phone calls. It's like calling someone 20 times until they answer you, leaving messages, sending 20 emails out. And so now all of a sudden we're starting to talk about, like, I would never send 20 emails out. And that's precisely what all of the people who are successful raising money, they keep on going after somebody until they either get an answer of no, I'm not a fit, or yes, I'm a fit. Thank you for consistently bothering me because I need to talk to you. And so, we run into this, I'm a scientist entrepreneur. I did really good in the academic environment. I got my tech transfer. I'm now going to go out and try and raise money and get a list. And, you're just taking all of these things with you and things that people who have been in the field for decades and really experienced fundraising CEOs, they're like, yeah, you got to keep on calling these people until they say no or they agree to a meeting. And it's like shocking to some people. And then, we go to different cultures. We were just dealing with Korea, Spain, Uruguay recently. And when we tell them, yeah, you've got to do that, they're going, like, culturally, we don't do that. We can't spam people, and we can't we just think it's inappropriate to call people more than 3 times after you've left messages and it's like they haven't returned the call. And so, we have to get in this thing where we then have to show people that there's this wave going by, and you're either going to catch the wave or you're not going to catch the wave. And you're going, well, I sent this guy 5 emails and I called him 3 times, so I'm not going to waste my time with this account anymore. But what we see every single week and every single month, and everybody we talk to, we have this one favorite story where the guy, this really famous entrepreneur that are friends with our company, he said, I sent this one investor 20 emails And I finally knew he was going to be at a cocktail party at one of the events I was at. And I found him at the cocktail party, and I went up and I introduced myself. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of you guys." And the person just in his mind started laughing. Go, "Yeah, I guess you've heard of me. I emailed you 20 times over the last 6 months." And so, these are some of the things that we have this thesis that if we can net out your story, your tagline, your elevator pitch, and we can put it in a PowerPoint, an executive summary, in a one-page data sheet, and then we can get the list for you, and then we can put it in a CRM, and then you can get a $20 or $30 an hour person, or somebody that's really good at these tedious repetitive tasks that are social meeting kind of things. You will go get all the meetings. And so part of the thing is, if you can you get your story straight, get your collateral straight, and then get your list and put it in a CRM, and you get someone to manage the CRM outreach, you as the CEO can log in once a day, once a week, and you can see how the person's doing. How many meetings did they get me? Because you really need a lot of meetings. Looks like there's a lot of chat things going on here. Okay, cool. And so these are book requests. Sorry about that. But anyway, so one of the big differences I've seen is that when a CEO who's been trying to do this and failing miserably puts somebody on it, and all of a sudden they're getting meetings every week on a regular basis, and then they're starting to have these dialogue, it really helps a lot. Go ahead, Karen.
Yeah, we had a question here come in on the Q&A. How often would you chase an investor? Once a week? Over how long?
Yeah. So to me, it's we have a couple of ways of doing it. It's when you're going to a partnering event, and when you're at a partnering event, you're in kind of a finite space. And so we have this process where we say, you use the subject line of an email, and you go first request, introduction to the company. A couple of days later, you go second request, more about the IP of the product. A couple of days later, third request in the subject line, more about the team. And then fourth request, final request. We have found that if you use that four-step program and you really got your story crisp, and they can just look at it and go, the tagline, oh, they've got antibody, nanotherapies for skin care. And they go, yeah, I want to talk to that person. They don't need to go this deep dive into all your stuff. They can just catch who you are, and they're really busy and they're at an event. So we have this one process here where we can do that at a finite thing. And then in the thing, if you get how do you reach out to an investor and what's the best way? Well, we believe that you keep on reaching out until they say no. And so that's where everybody falls off, and they go, I'm not going to do that. That's spamming people. And so then the question is, okay, the wave's going by, but you don't want to spam anybody. And then we have seen time and time again, an investor gets on the phone or sends a reply and said, I've been so busy. I just got back from 4 weeks in Asia, and before that I was in Europe, and that's 3 months ago. You've emailed me 5 times, and I really want to talk with you. My calendar's open next week. When do you want to talk? We see that all the time. And so the fact is that you're trying to reach out to an investor or a licensing partner or a collaboration partner, and you can't get a hold of them. And so you're just thinking like all these things that are happening. You may be right, you may be wrong, but if you just, we call it pinging. You're just pinging someone. You're going, hey, here's my information. You can click here for the PowerPoint, click here for the executive summary, click here for the data sheet. I've been trying to get a hold of you. I know you're busy. If I'm not a fit, tell me. And if I don't hear back, I'll wait to hear from you. And you just keep on repeating the process until someone gets back to you. Most of the time, people will say, yes, you're a fit. No, you're not a fit. Or I am like so busy, I can't believe it, but I really do want to meet with you. And Please just give me the breathing room. And so that's the three things I see. Do you want to comment, Karen?
Yeah, I would also say, you're going to want to send them periodic emails every week, every 2 weeks, something like that. But, and make sure to add new information every time, but also vary it up. Reach out to them on LinkedIn, see if they're posting about where they're going to be to see if you can run into them face to face. Create a monthly or quarterly newsletter where you can release new information about your company. There's different ways to catch their attention. So be creative about your outreach. It doesn't just have to be a simple email every time.
And one of the things, once you get a list of investors that you know are a fit and you start trying to have a dialogue with them, if you had like a monthly or a quarterly newsletter that says, here we are in our preclinical animal model, and here's some milestones we reached last quarter, and here's what we're hoping to do this quarter. And it's just a paragraph or two, but you're sending it out on a regular basis. So here's another thing for everybody. I have a bunch of friends of mine that are raising funds and some pretty well-known people. And I looked at them and I said, could you, send me your PowerPoint of what you're pitching to investors? And one of the guys, they were doing digital health, and they said in 2023, we reviewed 800 companies and made 3 investments. And then the other folk was a pediatric based fund, and he reviewed 600 companies to do 2 investments. And so on one side of the table, you have the startup CEO or fundraising entrepreneur, and they've got to have 800 targets to get a deal done. And then on the other side of the table, you have the guys who are raising funds, and they've got the same numbers problem. They've got to go find 800 technology assets so they can go invest in 3. And so both of the people on each side of the tables, the buyers and the sellers are the CEOs and the buyers are the capital investors. They each have the same problem. They got to get all of these vetting done, and it's a pure numbers game. And so when you're playing the numbers game, first of all, you got to know you're playing a numbers game, and that the numbers game then turns out to be uh, emailing the person until they say stop, calling them on the phone and saying, hey, I'm just trying to get 15 minutes of your time, pinging them on LinkedIn. Hey, I saw you going to where they're speaking, or they're at a venture cafe and going, I've been trying to reach you for months. What's the best way to get 5 minutes of your time? And that's the kind of thing that you need to do. And that's really hard for a lot of scientists, analytic researchers to kind of go through that. And so there's 2 places. You either say, I don't feel comfortable doing it, but I'm going to learn it, or I'm going to go get somebody that can do it for me. And that's kind of really what you got to think about. But so that brings us to level 5 here, which is, you got to really understand, how do you email, how do you phone canvas, how do you navigate using partnering systems and social media to get in front of people. Next slide, Karen. Um, we've talked that it really does take 9 to 18 months or more. And in my mind, when I was just in Phoenix, I was just in New Mexico, and they've got these great technologies and these great people that are doing stuff. They're either connected to a lab or they're connected to a university, and they're just stuck in their region. And we were talking to a guy yesterday from New Zealand, and he's got this great technology, mobile stroke imaging. And when you get a stroke, there's like a golden hour that if you can get really critical information and figure out what kind of stroke and where they're at, you can really like make a huge difference. And he's got a portable, cheap 4-minute, diagnostic test. And it's a really cool device. And how he found it was a really interesting story. And we were basically, his complaint to me was that because he's in his region, all of the investors, they all know each other, and they're kind of like a cartel. And I'm like, kind of like the mafia or a syndicate or a cartel. And they've got this small marketplace and they've got the money. And so they can go talk to people and they can say, we'll give you the money, but we're cramming you down on your value or whatever. But when he leaves the region and he starts talking to medical device, imaging, AI-based folks who are looking for the next generation of, stroke and cardiac and technologies, this guy's going to be great. He's got this amazing product with amazing data. It's portable, it's cheap, it's fast. It solves a major problem in that golden hour of saving people's lives in ERs. So that his machine needs to be in every ER everywhere. And and he's just complaining. It's like I'm stuck with all these investors that are, they cram me down and then they're not giving me enough of this or that. So there are, just good people everywhere, but there's also, the more you get out of your region and the more you meet people that are a fit for you and they're more worldly, they understand the North American marketplace, they understand Europe, they understand Asia, and you get out of your region in your sheltered area and you start getting those people as working with you and helping you, the whole game changes. And so, when I was in New Mexico and they said, everybody they take our value and there's only X amount of people for us to talk to. And like, they really argue about our value. It's like we get crammed down. And so it's just, not uncommon that people are kind of leveraging their ability when they're in a small pond. But when you leave your region and you start talking to global people, the whole world changes. So we're a big fan of it. You got to play the numbers game and you got to get out of your region and you've got to get into the global marketplace. Next slide, please. So picking the right events is really hard. If you're going to go to a bio event, it's typically, mid-stage and later. You can meet all the pharma folks that are looking to fill their pipeline. But if you're a, seed series A or B, it's probably a little bit harder to find the right people. And so picking the right event, like at our conferences, seed, series A, series B, series C is, we're really strong, but also the players that go to our conferences, they can get syndicates where they can do series D and E. And so making sure that you go to the right place and you're spending all your time and money and you're doing all the things that you need to do. And then you go someplace and you go, geez, I didn't get any meetings. That's like so disappointing. So you want to make sure that if you go someplace, you're having 15 or 20 meetings and you've got a real full dance card, and we can help with all that stuff. So, the moral of the story is it's totally tedious, it's extremely difficult, it's full of no's, it's and we say misery. And if you decide you're going to do it, then you really need to go for it and you need to do it right. And you just can't try and think that you know more than the market knows. You're going, well, personally, this is how I think it's done. You've got to really understand you're playing a numbers game, and that's what you got to go for. Next slide. So, and the other thing is it takes money. So I always go, anytime you stick out your hand to get money from someone, you're losing 20 or 25% of your company. And we also see these people that going like, oh, how much should we ask for? And like, what's it worth? And they just kind of like they talk amongst themselves, but they don't really understand that it takes the same amount of time to raise 1 million as it does 10 million, as it does 50 million. It takes the exact same amount of time. And then you're thinking, well, if we ask for a little, it'll be easier for us to get the job done. And it's just not true. So when I talk to people, they go, they're raising 1 million. I'm like, why aren't you raising 5 million? And they're going like, well, the people in our region told us we couldn't do that, And I'm always saying, uh, you've got to figure out what's going on for this year, what's going on for the second year, what's going on for the third year, and then take every year and put a bunch of milestones in for the next 3 years and make it as robust and as big as you can. Because if you're going to stick out your hand looking for money funding for 3 years, you're losing 20, 25% of your company. So do you want 1 million or you want 5 million? And, so those are kind of some things that you have to think about. Karen?
Yeah, and to add on to this, one of the biggest mistakes companies make ties back to the amount of time it takes to fundraise, and they don't leave themselves enough runway to complete the fundraise. And then they're desperate. They're trying to raise smaller amounts of money. They're going for a lot of different bridge rounds or safes and things like that, and they're making their lives overly complicated because they're desperate for the money to keep things going. And so being able to strategize ahead of time, make sure you have enough runway to complete the process. That also allows you to take your time to make sure you're doing it right. You're asking for the right amount to hit the next value inflection point. And in addition to that, it means that you have a little bit more negotiating power where you don't need to accept a bad deal because you don't have a choice.
And Karen, you don't have your that Gantt chart. That's kind of one of the key things. Maybe you could find out what. So, we come from Boston, and it's everybody does startups, and so we go to other parts of the country, and we're going like, we just don't have the money. We can't do it, and it's like it takes money to raise money. You've got to get out of your region. You've got to go places, and you got to go to friends and family, and you got to max out your credit cards, and you got to find grants, and you got to do mortgages, and you got to cash in your 401k, and you name it, you got to go after it. And people get very, very, going, I'm not doing any of that stuff. And it's like, well, if you're not going to do any of that stuff, that's your choice, but you really got to figure it out, because in Boston and other places that we go to, they just are throwing everything on the table and going for it. And if they fail, it's like it's terrible. But every failure, they learn so much, and they get up and they go for it again, and they take everything they've learned. So, you've got to figure out what to do. And one of the things for me is, did you find that Gantt chart, Karen?
Yep,
If
pulling
we
it up
can we
now.
put that up?
Yep.
That Gantt chart to me is like, it's your leverage so that you can ask for money, and not ask for a small amount, but ask for a big amount.
Yeah, and you can see here, this is a company that was doing a raise at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. So this was showing what they had previously raised, what they had managed to develop, how much they were raising for the next 3 years, and what milestones they'd be able to hit. And as a diagnostics company, they could even parse it out into different areas in terms of their research development, their patents, and their kit development, and where they were planning on going and how long they were going to be hitting those milestones within the next 3 years. So it provided the investors with a great deal of information, why they were raising the money, and exactly what they'd be able to accomplish with that money.
And I always say, you don't want to lie or go crazy, but figure out how to spend as much money as you can over a 3-year period, so you're not asking for 500K and giving 25% of your company away, and then as soon as you spend the money, you got to go and do another fundraise. But anyway, so just a couple more things. I saw someone ask, how do we get contacted? So Life Science Nation, we have this database, we have this entrepreneurial education, we have our Resi conferences that happen 5 times a year, 3 times in the US, 2 times in Europe. The next one we're going to be is December 4th in London, and then we'll be in JPM in January, and then we've got a couple in Boston next year. So I'm D Ford at Life Science Nation. So I'm easy to contact. We're willing to help anybody. Have a bunch of tools that can be helpful. And Karen, it's the same way. So we have 14 classes online. We train cohorts from all over the world: Brazil, Korea, Australia. We just finished Spain and Uruguay this week. And so what happens is regions kind of send cohorts to us, and we go through really what we need to get them ready for a global fundraise. And Karen, can you go to the next slide? We're kind of running out of time, and I want to get to the next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. That no, back up. No, go up, please. That one. So here's the thing, right? We we met this lady recently. She's a neurologist, a pediatrician neurologist, and she was given to us by some folks at the NIH because they're going. I was going. You guys, you're teaching people how to do PowerPoints, and you need to really teach them how to do a 9 to 18 month fundraise, and you really need to teach them how to tell their story. And so I've been banging on some of my colleagues over there, and I said, okay, we're going to give you this person and one of our staff, go show us what you can do. So I met her, and she's this, fabulous person, pediatrician and neurologist. And I said, well, tell me what you're doing. And so I looked at her PowerPoint, and the line on the PowerPoint was democratizing brain disorders. And I'm like, this is like standard. Some scientist, entrepreneur, has a logo and then has like a jingle or some kind of line that they think, makes sense. Like, and it really doesn't, and so, making the world a better place for cancer, changing, the patient, whatever gets called. It's just like you can't be doing these weird taglines that are like not making any sense. You need to do a tagline that completely makes sense for who the heck you are and what you're doing, and you only get 5 to 7 words to do it. So in this particular case, I started talking to her. I just want to know, like, what the heck did she do? And she said, Dennis, every parent and every teacher thinks there's something wrong with their kids, so they send them to the pediatrician, and then the pediatrician can't determine if it's a behavioral disorder or a neurological disorder until they send them to me so that I can test them. So we wind up with a gigantic bottleneck of a 9 month wait for me to go see somebody. And so she said, I figured out that I could design a smart app on a phone that, using hyperventilation and micro seizures, I would be able to look at a kid's eyes, and through AI algorithms, we could see if we could induce a micro seizure. So she figured out that if she could get a kid to blow into a fan, those little fans that you hold to spin around for 2 minutes, they could have this chemical reaction in the brain that would trigger a micro uh, uh, epileptic seizure that she could catch on the micro eye movements on the smartphone. And so she created this application. She started in 2018, and it took her like 10 years to get the whole thing done. And I said, great. So what does that have to do with democratizing brain cancer? It's just like, it's a slogan, sounds great, but that's not what you want to do. And so I said, what you really are doing is you're using a smartphone for early detection of absent seizures. And she goes, yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm like, well, that's your tagline. And so then we talked to her more. It turns out she got FDA approval, got a code, and is selling this to clinics, and is like dramatically impacting the bottlenecks of these poor kids waiting for 9 months before you can get them into treatment. And she's on $1 million run rate. And so I said, you're like, everyone's saying the digital health world's going to come and change everything as we know it. And everybody's been waiting for 5 years. And here you are with a product and a code and revenue. I say, you're great. You should, and so, so we helped her with her store. We helped her do this. But so we got her tagline, we put the elevator pitch. And then we said, let's get this narrative about that little story that I just told everybody. The problem with, everybody thinks there's something wrong with their kids. There's a bottleneck at the pediatrician to get to the neurologist. The neurologist figured out how to do a local test that a PCP or a primary care physician or pediatrician could do in their office in 5 minutes, and put those little paragraph on the first page. And if somebody reads it, they're going to go, yeah, I want to meet with this person. So all of the work that we do, telling stories and setting up the narrative and all that good stuff, is just so somebody will say yes to a meeting. And so we believe that if you get your tagline straight, you get your elevator pitch straight, you put it on the title slide of your PowerPoint, at the top of your executive summary, and at the top of your one-page data sheet, investors will look at it and go, yes, I need to talk to that person. So go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I just want to
Karen.
add, that all of this is not just it's about telling your story. It's about getting a meeting, but it's also about making sure that you stick in the investor's mind. If you're going to JPM and you're in a networking event, people are getting hundreds of business cards and they see your business card, they see your name, they see your company. Do you think they'll remember what you do if you write democratizing brain health versus app for primary care diagnosis of absence seizures? One is definitely going to trigger a memory. The other is absolutely not.
So we're running out of time. If anybody has any questions, we can take the questions. If anybody wants to get to us, we're easy to get to. We do like a ton of entrepreneurial education. We've got a ton of products. We're here to help, and we'd really like to thank you for attending this webinar today, and we really appreciated your attention.
Yeah. Okay. And if there are any questions, if one occurs to you, feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to answer. We'd be more than happy to set up a call. And if you want feedback on your direct marketing collateral, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to help.
Or your elevator pitch, or
Or
I
your
mean, or
elevator.
your tagline. Somebody has
Any
a
of those.
tagline, shoot it over to us and we can help you with that too.